Welcome to Blockchain 2025. We explore how blockchain technology will affect major industries in the future.
Each episode dissects one industry, how it currently works, why blockchain can disrupt it, and some blockchain projects trying to be the solution.
Blockchain 2025 is part of the Bitcoin.com podcast network. Learn about Bitcoin, create a wallet, and buy your first Satoshis all at Bitcoin.com.
All right, we've made it to episode number 4. Nick, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
Good. This is Matt Aaron and Nick Cutanero with Blockchain 2025. And to start off, Nick, you know I run the Bitcoin.com podcast website. Well, I've been getting emails from women all around the world just asking for photos of Nick and all this stuff, and it's been taking a lot of time away from me planning the show.
That's pretty funny. I've been getting some creepy DMs on Twitter as well. Not from women, from Eastern European guys.
Oh, man. Well, that's good. It means people are starting to listen to the show. Everyone listening today, besides the creepy Eastern European men, do you have any ideas for industries that you'd like to hear on the podcast? Just go to bitcoin.com/podcast, click on the show, Blockchain 2025, and send us a message. And even if you have some feedback for the show, whether it's critical, a pat on the back, we want to hear it. We want to make this show better, and we want to give you what you want to hear. Let's go into today's show. So, Nick, what is the industry we're covering today?
Today we'll be talking about decentralized publishing.
Okay, let's define, publishing is pretty obvious, but can you go into decentralization? Because this is something we're going to talk about on just about every episode. But explain the spectrum of centralization versus decentralization.
So as it relates to today's episode, particularly for content publishing, content consumption for users, as the case may be, let's look at centralization, and the example for today is YouTube. So YouTube, owned by Google, it's controlled by a company. You adhere to their terms and conditions, their rules. Essentially, for a content creator, and I say this loosely, a content owner, because you don't really own the content when you're building on someone else's land, it creates a scenario where there could be mistrust from the content owner, the content creator, and the centralized authority, that being YouTube. Essentially, you just don't know where that line is drawn between ownership and control and being extinguished tomorrow if, say, YouTube wakes up on the wrong side of the bed.
That's right. You're at the perils of essentially maybe one person or one centralized entity can say, you know what, we don't like Nick's content anymore. He's not going to get profit share, or we're just going to delete his account. And on Twitter, Facebook, accounts have been deleted for sure a lot of justifiable reasons, but probably also some gray areas where people thought it was unfair. And I think that's a big downside to the centralized publishing industry. And let's go a little bit more into money. So the revenue splits, these things can change over time. If you've seen in the media, a lot of YouTubers have complained that they don't make the same amount of money on YouTube as they used to. So what's the problem there? I'd say the problem is that people sign up, they put all of their creative energy and content into one platform, but they have to make that bet that the platform will keep the same model. And the business model of YouTube changed, and now they have to change their business model. This could happen on a decentralized publishing platform as well, but I think the key difference between centralized and decentralized is decentralized allows for a democracy where the community decides, what is valuable and what is not.
Correct. And I'd like to start by saying I don't believe centralized publishing is bad by definition. It has its upsides and it has its downsides like any other industry. But I do believe decentralized elements will weave their way into the centralized models that we're using today.
So that's a really interesting concept, Nick. And we see it right now with the most common example of this would be reviews, right? Reviews on Amazon and Airbnb, where people are allowed to read reviews and the rating systems developed through a user-based content. Obviously, the algorithm of how the reviews are weighted is determined by the central authority, but nonetheless, that is a decentralized element of these platforms.
For sure. Touching upon Amazon, don't get me started there. I think their review platform is horrific because it allows for people who've never purchased a product potentially bots, identities that may not be tied to humans, being able to leave comments on products. To me, that's not good. It's not good as a consumer of products on Amazon, and that's not good to artificially inflate rankings on Amazon because you can optimize listings to rank better for keywords.
For sure. So we've talked about control, that YouTube has control. We've talked about monetization, that they also have control over how much money you make, not just where your content is. But Nick, tell us a little bit about the downsides of privacy when it comes to centralized platforms.
So with centralized platforms, every keystroke can potentially be recorded. So you might not even be at the point as a content creator to publish something. And up until then, everything is being recorded, which is concerning because now you don't own those thoughts and those ideas. And depending on what those thoughts and ideas are, it could potentially get you in hot water from a legal perspective.
Gotcha. So in terms of keystrokes being recorded, like against your will, you mean maybe just something you type, a comment you make on a video, or can you give us the clear-cut example there?
So let's just take the website Medium. And I don't know if this is true, we'll just use them as an example. They're a blogging platform. So anyone can register for an account, very similar to, say, WordPress or Blogger, if you're familiar with that website from back in the day. You start creating a draft of a piece of content, and there's nothing stopping the centralized platform from recording the keystrokes, saving drafts, progressively saving along the way. Whether or not that article gets published by you, whether you decide to hit the publish button, is a whole separate conversation. But just know that it's feasible for that content, those thoughts, pre-edited to be recorded.
That's a great example. Now I understand what you're saying. And the same thing on YouTube. Think of it this way, Nick. I could put a private or unlisted video, right? That's obviously in YouTube. Those private unlisted videos are on YouTube servers. They could easily be hacked and made available to the public.
Again, nothing is stopping that from happening. Read the terms and conditions of your favorite websites that you post on regularly. In most cases, you waive all rights to ownership.
Wow. So Nick, are you one of those people that's actually read the terms and conditions of some of these websites?
Does it bother me that every update I make on, say, Facebook or Instagram is the property of Mark Zuckerberg? To a certain degree, it bothers me. But in the grand scheme of things, without those centralized platforms, there's no way that I could get my message out there effectively. So love it or hate it, sometimes you just got to roll with what reality is.
Yeah, and it's a funny joke in the crypto space that's like, who actually read the white paper? And even people really high up or people that invested a lot of money, it's like, did you read that 34-page technical white paper? And a lot of people don't. But yeah, and I think you mentioned something here, the critical mass, right? I think the obvious upsides to the current industry is, Google owns YouTube, and YouTube has a ton of traffic. Medium has a ton of traffic. So these centralized platforms already have this user base. It's going to be difficult for a decentralized platform to take over one of these Goliaths.
For sure, that's one of the biggest challenges, and we've touched on this in previous episodes when looking at centralized versus decentralized. There is merit in a centralized model when you can instantaneously plug into traffic, whether you own the content or not. Like I said before, it's a different story. I think for many people, when the frustration arises, it's when they've worked so hard building, say, a YouTube channel or building a blog on Medium, and they wake up one day and it's gone. And they didn't back up the work, they didn't save any of their original pieces, and it no longer exists. I think instances like that really frustrate people beyond not owning the content in theory.
Makes sense, man. So let's move right into the second part of the show. How would blockchain solve and disrupt the online publishing industry?
Well, there's many ways to look at the upsides. You can look at monetization as being one. With a decentralized environment, content creators can be paid in a variety of ways, separate and apart from revenue sharing on ads, right? So in a decentralized environment or bringing elements of decentralization in, you can pay a content creator for content. You can thank them, you can have incentivized elements where if you're sharing, you can receive compensation for the share if you build up an authority account. There's many different ways to skin the cat, but taking control of monetization using blockchain for wallet integration is just one of many ways.
Right. And you mentioned building on top of your own land. I'd compare it to real estate and property rights. We'll get into some of the projects in a bit, but you actually own some of the content you're creating, and that's pretty exciting.
For sure. I look at decentralization even differently. I like owning content, so I own coinreviews. I own the hosting because I pay for it. Really, the servers are somewhere else. I'm just paying monthly for it. I utilize a registrar. I'm in control of the content. I'm claiming ownership of it. The reason why I'm doing that is really for control, or I could just put that content on, say, medium.com. And I thought about that too. Lower barrier of entry, lower fees. There's like a built-in CMS. There is traffic there existing, but I chose to take control of my own content by buying a domain, setting up hosting, and going that route. Because it's important for content creators to try and retain as much of the content ownership as possible.
Right. So while it's not a decentralized platform, you created your own platform. That's very interesting. And also very important in today's world of fake news, as you saw in the 2016 election and plenty of other examples, that the technology is getting to the point where they'll be able to create a video of Nick saying and doing whatever they want, and it will look exactly like Nick Cutinera. That's really scary. Think about all the options. They could make a compromising video of a politician, whatever it is. So there's going to be more and more demand for authenticating who is the real owner of content. And that's where I think blockchain steps in big in this world where it's hard to know what to believe, and giving us certainty who owned and created content, and also what content did you not create. That might even be more important, the content that people are framing on you that you didn't actually make.
I love it. So to get around that right now on coin reviews, if I am the author of a post, you'll notice that I am the author by a little author box at the bottom of the post. Beyond that, there's no telling where I got the insight from, where I got the information from. For all you know, I could have copied and pasted from somewhere else. So that doesn't really solve a problem, the authorship box, because you can fake that if you chose to. So having elements of timestamping and ownership on the blockchain will give a lot more insight as to who owns it, who has a license to distribute the content, has any syndication happened with that content, can you pay for rights to syndicate, and everything being recorded in full transparency.
That's right. And what I love about the blockchain is it's all these industries kind of have to work together. You mentioned identity, right? So you also have, if you can verify your identity on a blockchain, that I am who I say I am, and then as long as that identity that's on the blockchain connects to that content, you pretty much have an immutable way to prove that you created something. So that's pretty exciting. All right, well, I think we've covered how blockchain can disrupt and add value to the publishing industry. Let's highlight some projects that are trying to solve this right now. And the first project I'd like to talk about is STEEMIT, which you could kind of call a decentralized version of Reddit.
I got to stop you there, Matt. I hate doing it, but you need to be very careful using the word decentralized. And a lot of people are doing it right now where they're using the word freely and throwing it around like confetti. It needs to hold more weight than just that. The issue with STEEMIT right now is that it is centrally owned. It's hosted on Amazon servers. So while there are elements of decentralization within the platform, for example, they utilize their own cryptocurrency, you still need to look at it as somewhat centralized.
Right. Good point. And I appreciate you clarifying that. It's a continuum between centralization and decentralization, as we talked about earlier. So for those that don't understand, we talk about like stored on their servers. If it was fully decentralized, just like Bitcoin, you'd have people running STEEMIT nodes all around the world. So it would be on a set of nodes. You can also think of BitTorrent, but truly peer-to-peer. So you mentioned you love Steem. What do you like about SteemIt?
As an SEO guy, I love that it ranks so darn well on Google. We've been using Steem at our agency, the Link Builders, for almost a year right now. The site holds a lot of authority and weight on Google. So this is a little marketing tip. The more you start posting on Steem and building up your account, the easier it will be to rank on Google for whatever terms that you like.
Okay, I like that as well. I'd like to ask you a question, Nick. So there's no doubt there are some complaints about Reddit. In Reddit, you essentially, all the subreddits, they have moderators. So people do complain about censorship on Reddit. But for what it's worth, I think Reddit's done a pretty good job. And the fact that it's around, I don't know how many years later since it's been created, Reddit's done a really good job, I would say, as a fully centralized platform. And one thing that people may not know about SteemIt is that you directly make money from a post, meaning people like your post and you literally earn money on the post. Whereas Reddit, you do not earn any money, although obviously if you're on the homepage of Reddit, you can get tons and tons of views to your website. Also, as a curator of content, this is something that's very interesting to me about SteemIt. If I like content that becomes popular, so think about this, meaning that if I like a post that only has 1 or 2 likes and it ends up getting, I don't know, 1,000 likes, I get rewarded for being early, for helping curate the popular content on the platform. So I guess I'd like your thoughts on SteemIt's model for rewarding users and if you see any upsides or downsides to it.
There are so many upsides to Steem right now and using the SteemIt platform. I can recall one instance where Grant Cardone, my idol, love the guy, real estate investor, New York Times best-selling author, he gave me $5 in Steem just because I wrote a thoughtful, heartfelt response to one of his posts on Steem. I thought that was super cool, and that's what keeps the economy of Steem going, is more people commenting, more people engaging, more content creators realizing this might be a more efficient way to monetize my content through engagement, and also realizing that at any moment in time, people can freely just give you money because they find value in what you're producing.
I think this is another argument just for cryptocurrencies in general on any type of platform. Micropayments and micro tips. Maybe you see an amazing video that moves you and you just want to send them 3 cents. That's great. Whereas with current payment systems, it would be too expensive and it wouldn't make sense to send someone just 3 cents.
And that happens all the time on SteemIt, where people are tipping 50 cents, a quarter, and they're writing a cool message like, thank you so much for writing that. Or they're just trying to bait the content creator into looking at their page, sharing their content. So I look at Steem as a game, and collecting more Steem gives you more options to market your content, engage with your readers. And I love what Grant did. It's brilliant because that $5 that he gave me in the form of a tip for writing a nice comment on his blog, look at the social reach we're creating now, Matt, by just telling that story. It's brilliant. He's a marketing genius. And other people can do the exact same thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And moving on to our second platform, Props, which is by the creators of YouNow. And YouNow is kind of like a live streaming video platform where you can create a live stream and get likes and so forth. And it's a video-based network. And their first application is called the Rise app. And they're building a decentralized ecosystem of video applications. You could create a karaoke, and the rewards are endless. And I'll let Nick tell you more about it.
Thanks, Matt. Props, it's a video-based network. I think it's the truest sense of decentralization in where the market wants to go because it's created on a peer-to-peer network. It's app-driven. The content will be distributed among the users. So there's just more incentive for more users to be on the network. And as mobile devices become faster, better, bandwidth improving, overall the network is just going to prosper.
Yeah, and Props encourage everyone to visit the website because they have a lot of things going on. If you go to propsproject.com, because they have their Rise app. You can develop your own type of app on there. It's kind of like a decentralized YouTube with more social media components, more connection between all the users on there. Really fascinating to me. Yeah, and so I would check them out. And then moving forward, this is a really interesting one. I'd like to give a full description to make sure people understand it. So Nick, can you tell us about Po.et, which is Po.et?
So Po.et, I'm really excited about. It's relevant to my interests as a digital agency focusing on brand and reputation management. Attribution is one of the biggest things that blockchain will solve in the content game. Who owns the content? Who authored the content? When did this happen? And having a record of it. It makes syndication easier. Licenses can be issued through the Po.et network, and records can remain on the blockchain. What I also like about Po.et is they have their own cryptocurrency, so transactions happen on their network, their blockchain, and it allows for buyers of content, sellers of content being authors, to transact in a community that is content driven.
Gotcha. So Po.et, if I'm a writer or I write content and blog posts, I can use Po.et to timestamp when I created and prove that I am the owner of this. And I can also put my content for sale. Maybe I've written some articles on a certain network that someone else wants to purchase. And all that can be done through Po.et with a clear chain of ownership and who's had it and who's done what. And I think there's another thing that's really important here, not just proving who made the content, but we talked about when it was written. So think about predictions. Suppose I make a prediction on a football game. I say I think the Steelers are going to win. How do you know that I didn't just, after the game, go change the date of my blog post to make it look like I predicted before the game? Well, with Po.et, you can ensure that your predictions are time-stamped to the day, whether you're right or wrong. I think that's pretty interesting.
It just makes content more credible at that point. You're absolutely right. Any post that I've ever made on a WordPress blog, I can go in and edit to my liking at any moment in time, and it could provide a distorted reality to the recipient of that content reading it. So I really like what they're doing. I like what they're trying to achieve. I think that fake news is a big problem, and platform like Po.et will help to solve some of those issues that we're seeing.
For sure. And again, sometimes this happens where a really talented blogger doesn't get credit because either a larger blog or a larger newspaper will kind of take their work. But if you could prove that you were the creator of the content, that could really help a lot of authors and people that create content just for their own rights and their own careers on a personal level. So I think that's also a nice benefit. And Nick, in our notes here, you mentioned that this coin, which is POE, Poe, I love it, Edgar Allan Poe, great name for a coin. It's traded on Binance, and it's about a $125 million market cap and has a daily volume around $2 million, meaning a 24-hour transaction volume of $2 million. And you mentioned that. You said, Matt, that's important. That's good. So for listeners that are not, into trading, they're just trying to learn about blockchain. Why is daily volume, a high daily volume, perhaps an indicator that the project has belief?
I look at daily volume as an indicator of life. At the very least, there's some speculation going on, whether people hate the project or love the project. There's liquidity in the markets so that people can buy, people can sell. It's just a representation that there's some life there. And for me, looking at Poe, love the ticker, as you touched on, Edgar Allan Poe. It's brilliantly named and appropriate. There's some legs to this right now. I never heard of the project until doing our research for today's episode. So I'm really looking into trading it, owning it for my business. I see utility. I could see myself utilizing Po tokens to do what we do at the link builders better.
Very cool. Yeah. So I would say so far, to recap, we've talked about Props, which is a decentralized video network, Po.et, which is its own thing. We've talked about STEEMIT, which we'll call an alternative to Reddit using blockchain. And the final project that I'd like to talk about is called Flixxo. Now, it's similar to Props, but there are some serious differences here. You could call it a decentralized YouTube, and it all comes down to their limited supply of tokens. Well, let me explain. Their argument would be that on YouTube and Facebook, there's an unlimited supply of likes, meaning Nick can like every single post on his newsfeed and he'll still have more likes. Well, Flixxo, they make that a scarce commodity, and various people in the ecosystem can earn their Flix token, which is their liking currency. One, you can watch advertisements. Two, you can provide storage space and bandwidth. You also get tokens for that. And three, you spend the same token to watch content. So that's pretty interesting to me. So if I become a video creator on Flixxo and I get really good, then people will want to earn tokens, watch advertisements and give bandwidth and pay tokens to see what I'm creating. So I think that's really, really interesting, the concept of being able to charge people money for the content you create. Also worth noting, the co-founder of RSK Labs, the Argentinians who made Rootstock. If you're not familiar with Rootstock, Rootstock is just we'll say it oversimplified, it's a project that makes Bitcoin like Ethereum, meaning you can develop applications on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. Adrian Gerlich. So they have a strong team as well. But yeah, I mean, Nick, how does that sound? The ability that, you have to pay tokens to watch some content, and that as a creator, you can charge directly for the content as opposed to just having advertising revenue.
It forces content creators to create amazing content, because if the content isn't amazing, it's going to be a very, very tough pull to get someone off YouTube or say another type of platform into Flixxo. So I think it forces, just as a byproduct, content creators to create super exclusive, super valuable content that will draw people in willing to be open-minded and utilize a platform that they may have never utilized before.
For sure. And summing it up here, I also want to thank the Flixxo team because they contributed to our research for the show. So Adrian and everyone at Flixxo, thanks so much. Nick and I have to kind of go in blind every week through the industry and learn the best we can. So it helps when the startups can assist us. But yeah, let's move to the conclusion. Nick, is decentralized publishing the future?
I think elements of it will be. It's going to be very difficult to get people away from the traffic. People have habits. They're very used to going to yahoo.com and getting news from Yahoo. People are reliant on even social media, getting news and updates and articles from friends and random people they follow on Twitter pushing links around the internet. Do I see elements of decentralization being beneficial for centralized platforms? Absolutely, without a doubt. I love what Po.et is doing. At the very least, that makes the playing field a little bit more level. It takes some of the uncertainties about the integrity of content out and gives a platform for authors and content owners to prove ownership and feel as though that their creative contributions are not being overlooked or compromised.
So I agree on everything you said, really. I mean, I have to highlight just the problem with fake news and just attributing ownership and getting rid of plagiarism using the blockchain. I think that is 100% something that blockchain will do to positively benefit this industry. And then, yeah, there's the user adoption challenge. Flixxo and Props and their Rise video-based network, when it comes to taking away YouTubers and getting them on their network, maybe YouTube messes up. I mean, they got some smart guys over there. So I want to highlight something that happened on YouTube just this year, and there was a recent update today. Logan Paul, a famous YouTuber with more than 15 million followers, uploaded a video, and it got a lot of backlash. The YouTube team, the centralized team, considered it offensive and punished him by demonetizing his content. So he was not getting paid for a number of weeks, and then just yesterday or the day before, he was put on probation for 90 days. So, I mean, that's a concrete example of having your revenue stream literally being demonetized in a day, one video. So I think that's worth mentioning and thinking about. And so if more of these things happen, YouTube has to be careful because Flixxo and the Rise platform will be around to maybe recruit, and try to get user adoption, get some big YouTubers to say, hey, I'm not using YouTube anymore. I'm going to this decentralized video sharing platform.
It even affects people in the cryptocurrency space. So Omar Bam, Crypto's News, love the YouTube channel. And it's unfortunate, but there are a lot of trolls, there are a lot of haters out there that will flag content, call it spam, call it infringing upon copyrighted material or hateful content, you name it, they'll accuse you of it. And there's been instances where he's even described his challenges as a content creator on YouTube where the monetization is unclear, his rankings may go away, and there may be instances where the future of his channel is uncertain to him, where he wakes up saying, is this really where I want to build my castle, on somebody else's land? So utilizing decentralized elements, whether it be the full platform or not, is going to happen to a certain degree now, maybe 2020, 2023. I only look at it as being something beneficial for the publishing industry as a whole.
For sure. Yeah, so I think our conclusion is the same this time. Sometimes Nick and I will disagree. There's definitely benefits of decentralization. Blockchain is definitely going to help the industry for attribution and proper attribution of content you created and content you did not create. Well, Nick, great episode. What are we going to talk about next week?
Next week, we'll be talking about identity on the blockchain.
Fantastic. Well, listeners, as always, please leave a review on iTunes, share it on Facebook, social media, wherever you want to share it, to friends that you think would like and benefit from the show. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Bitcoin.com podcast network. To learn more about our shows, visit Bitcoin.com/podcast. Bitcoin.com podcast network.